Anne-Marie, and then also Trung and V to join us later on. And so thank you again for attending, and we hope you stay after the panel discussion to learn a little bit of Tai Chi from one of our board directors, Evelyn Lee.
Thank you, everyone. So without much ado, we'll start with the BLOODLINE screening, and then followed by the panel discussion with Chef Chu, Kevin Tang, Trung, Lee Liu, and moderated by Evelyn Lee. Thank you.
It's a little exaggerated, but I have this massive macro that these three people have just come. It's symbolic of my family's relationship with the ocean. When I first got my tattoos, my mom cried. They hated it. The first one who taught me how to cook, I would have to say, is my mom. I always hung around the kitchen, so she let me taste things. It's how I developed my palate. I learned how carrots taste, how onions taste. I have a special relationship with her garden. When I had a stomach ache, my mom would pick the leaves off of the male pomegranate tree, bushes of lemongrass, the kaffir lime tree. My mom and my dad would always tell me to go outside and pick so they could cook for dinner.
Nhưng mà hồi nhỏ đó là nó biết ăn cái gì đó mà nó đi chợ với mẹ nó biết mua rồi nó đòi mua rau thơm. Ông nói nhộng nó cười nó nói mẹ con muốn cái này thơm thơm.
My mom's very poetic in a lot of ways. She cherishes things from her island. On all of our trips, my mom would bring something back. This is literally our land. This is our heritage. She has this theory that if you mix these shells into the soil in our backyard garden, it will help things grow. My family is from Foodline Island. And Foodline Island, if I could paint a visual for you guys, South China Sea, this whole region of China, Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, and I exist in this small little island right down here, off the shores of Cambodia, away from Vietnam. Everyone in my family fished in the ocean. Ocean is a big part of our culture, big part of our heritage, big part of our bloodline. I remember hanging out with my uncles in Vietnam where they would tell me that they wouldn't feel well if they didn't see the ocean that day. I still try to stay connected to the island, bringing back ingredients from our family farms. Peppercorns, cashews, but most importantly, fish sauce. We've been making fish sauce ever since 1895.
Con gái chừng 10 mấy ngày cái nó xong rồi.
When you walk through our parents' garden, there's definitely a feel of being in Vietnam. The perilla, the fish wort, the Thai bird chilies, the sugar cane that we have back there, the list goes on and on. My parents were forced out of their homeland. If they didn't leave, they tell me all the time they would starve. My dad experienced 2 wars. He was drafted by the Democratic Vietnam Army as a very, very young man to engage in war with the Khmer Rouge, which is a Nazi-like regime that existed in Cambodia. And my dad had to go through a second war with my mom, not as a soldier, but as a civilian, where they were able to navigate and escape Vietnam on a boat to make it over to Thailand in a refugee camp. I think my dad was in his like late teens by then, early 20s, something like that. I can't imagine doing that as an airman.
Mà 15 tuổi mẹ bà ngoại cho mẹ đi học may đồ, làm sao biết cắt, làm sao biết đo cái body, cái người của người ta đó. Chừng nào mẹ vô chạy đi nạn, mẹ không có quần áo rồi cái tiền học phải cho mình áo lớn đó, mình phải sửa lại quần áo nhỏ. Chừng nào mình đi á, mình đâu có đem được nhiều quần áo, nhưng mà đi biển, ở ngoài biển tới 2-3 ngày rồi bị cướp biển này kia, người ta lấy hết đồ rồi, bị cướp biển lấy hết quần áo, rồi cái mình phải đi vô trại tị nạn, mỗi người có một bộ dính cho mình thôi. Rồi người ta hỏi mình, người ta thấy mẹ may quần áo, mẹ bận á, rồi cái người ta mướn mẹ làm, mẹ được trả 30 bát. 30 bát của Thái Lan á, ăn được 1 ngày, sống được 1 ngày, 30 bát, không biết rồi bao nhiêu tiền Mỹ nữa, khoảng chừng hồi đó mẹ nghĩ là chừng đồng hay là đồng rưỡi gì, $1 hay là $1.50 gì đó, something like that.
It wasn't until these most recent years where I started to cook, my mom was able to open up to me about a few stories of how life was like during the war. If you ask her about food, she taught herself how to cook in a refugee camp. So her basics are rooted in using whatever she could find. Aside from that, we don't actually talk about the war. The earliest memory of my dad and I used to fish underneath the Bay Bridge. We used to catch everything from like shark, which people wouldn't eat. We would. Stingrays, Fairfield River in Sacramento River, we would fish for bass, catfish. We would go super late at night, like 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, and we would camp out. And we would buy certain food items to get us through the night, eat sometimes corn, sometimes we would crayfish if that was in season, rice, obviously, like minimal, simple things. But usually we would bet on the hopes of catching fish to cook and eat it in that moment. In my preteen years, I noticed that most of my uncles, my dad's friends included, had a bunch of restaurants, mainly pho restaurants. That kind of turned me on to restaurants and serving food, was that I had this great relationship with food already from my upbringing. That was my insight into success. Manual labor. My parents never wanted me to work with my hands. My dad used to tell me, I want you one day to sit in a chair, make phone calls, manage from a desk. I think manual labor is just a nice way of us Westerners saying that we don't feel like your skill set is a highly skilled craft. It's been raining all week, and this is the first break of sun that we got, so why not go outside and barbecue, right? Great opportunity to hang out with my pops and my mom. Decided to go out and get some fish and cook. So we brought in chili pepper curry about lingcod today. My mom, with all the bones and the scraps, she's going to be making dao, which is rice porridge. She's going to make a broth of fumet with the fish bones and all the fish scraps that my dad and I are using. She's going to make this beautiful rice porridge soup out of it. My dad saved all the bloodline for me, so I'm going to make a dish with it. Bloodline of the fish exists in between the skin and the flesh itself. And the reason why it's red is because it's so dark, it's that's where all the blood is. You know, you have this deep, dark, bold flavor that you usually don't see in fish. That's literally the essence of the fish. Restaurants would throw this beautiful chain away. People always complain that essence of fish is usually a fishy thing. Ironic, right? And if you want the flavor of fish, you should embrace it. In the US, it's about prime cuts, what looks pretty on a plate. So much is thrown away, which creates a bias of what's good. On Phu Quoc, we eat everything, bones, bloodline. But I actually learned how to eat this in Oakland. As a kid, Dad would bring home all the scraps. We didn't have much money, so we just see value in things that people wasted or threw away. My parents were able to make it into like a beautiful dish that nourished both myself and my sister. They never told us you have to eat this because we're refugees. It was, eat this because it tastes good. Funny story about my parents. My parents met each other in their teens, and the only thing he knew how to do was fish and dive. So he would go out to the market and dive for fish and try to sell whatever fish he caught for that day to provide for his family. My dad had a family of 12 to feed, brothers and sisters, and his mother included. So my dad didn't have time for dates. But at his small little stand at the fish market, my mom started to notice this handsome man. He would save the best catch of the day that he had for my mom. And as things progressed, it was my mom that asked my dad out. As the war started escalating, the presence of communism started increasing. My parents' relationship grew into an intimate one, to the point they eloped together.
1975 á, mẹ còn nhỏ lắm mà cũng không biết tại sao lại giống như là chừng nào không có được đi học nữa, không có đủ gạo ăn, về không có được buôn bán gì hết á. Ở nhà ai cũng không có thiếu đồ ăn, thì mẹ xù xì chạy đi qua Thái Lan ở 9 tháng. Mẹ được nhà thờ sponsor đi qua Auckland. Mẹ đi làm hotel mà mẹ đi làm ở trong cái chỗ người ta ship khăn á, để mà ta organize, ta ship khăn mà người ta để cho khách. Ba đi nấu.
Chả nước mắm chưa đường. Dạ muốn nướng thử nữa. Rồi nó làm được mấy tháng rồi cái người ship nó thấy tôi giỏi quá mới dạy tôi nấu. Nó giết thời gian nhiều quá, có thời gian nhiều trong nhà hàng quá, không có thời gian cho gia đình. Bởi vì
You know, they've been committed to each other for close to 40 years. And funnily enough, because my mom was rich and my dad was poor, they never got a blessing to get married. There's a brief period of time where I wanted to like MMA fight, and do martial arts and do all the cool things. I grew up in Oakland, in one of the roughest neighborhoods in the nation. In the 90s, I was always involved in some sort of fight. So the kids would, do the common thing and try to either take my shoes, ask for $1. The classic bully tactics, right? I'd say no because I'm hard-headed. We get in a fight, whether I win or they win, didn't matter because they'll always come back with their 10 friends and I'd get my ass kicked. I wasn't able to connect with my parents about that because they literally lived in a war zone and they were dodging bullets. And they found a way to escape that. And they would always challenge me if they were able to dodge and escape bullets and, genocide and all those things. Why was I able to dodge bullies in fights? And they gave me a lot of perspective, It taught me that if they could do things in that extreme situation, there's opportunity for me to figure out things in my situation. I think that contributed a lot to my success in being a chef. The aha moment came in my high school years as I started to cook more and I started to, my parents allowed me to actually use the stove and I would actually cook dinner and, mainly with barbecue and, fried rice and, simple, amateur level stuff, home cooked stuff. And people started to like my food. I was connecting with people, that I was able to trigger an emotion into somebody, make them happy, do something I did. To have that type of acknowledgement felt great. My mom cooked out of necessity to feed her family. I mean, of course there was joy in that, but I wanted to translate my emotion of joy in cooking into a career. And my mom thought that was absurd because my dad used to be a kitchen manager, in a Chinese restaurant, and just very exploitive, lots of hours, lots of stress, lots of hard work. So I told my mom I wanted to go to cooking school. She freaked out.
Nên ông nói, mẹ ngồi xuống. Nó nói với mẹ là nó muốn đi học nấu ở bên San Francisco ở trường gì á. Oh my God, trời đất ơi. Mẹ nói con học nấu. Con đâu có biết làm gì đâu con nấu. Thì nó nói Mom, I know what I want. Oh my God, trời đất ơi. Mẹ từ giống như trên sky rơi xuống á.
Asian parents are hard, man. It's very opposite of what you see nowadays and what the Western world encourages you to teach your kids. I see on TV, I think it was like some special parenting program, and it was saying you need to encourage your kids, you need to validate them and let them know they did a good job. And I'm not questioning that. I'm pretty sure it works, but I didn't get that. For me, my parents were very hard. It's like they were very critical. Hey mom, I got a B-. Why didn't you get an A+? Or hey mom, I cooked this. Close, but not right. You can't call this that dish if it's not right. I mentioned to my parents I was going to be on Top Chef. My mom was like, what is that? My dad was like, are you getting paid?
Really smoky product. There was more freshness, more graciousness. The winner of the first fire challenge is Trung.
When my dad asked me if I'm getting paid, that tells you everything about what he went through, what he thinks. It was not something we really talked about. We come from two different cultures. My dad's Vietnamese, that's mixed with Khmer and Chinese as well. And I am this 6'2", oversized Vietnamese American growing up in Oakland. Different cultures, growing up in different places, so we really couldn't connect.
Không mà hả? Ăn nữa hả? No, Trung ơi.
Earlier today, we went out to the Asian market to pick fish. We were going to scan over things to see what we're going to cook for the day. And I swear to you, it must have been over 10 years since I did that with my dad. I riffed with my dad. I'm like, Dad, you're the fish expert. What do you think we should get? We both agreed that we should get something alive. And we ended up picking lim cod. Local fish, super delicious, great flesh, nice bite to it, good fish fat. And then we broke it down. I tend to forget how precious moments like that are. I remember meeting this guy. I was introduced to him by a client. So he introduces me. It's like, hey, come over here, too. I want you to meet my colleague. I want you to meet my friend. Shake hands with him. This is my chef. We're doing work together. He's helping me developing some stuff. The guy immediately looks at me and tells me to my face, man, you look like a mechanic. The interesting thing is, in that moment, I started to understand even more so why my dad didn't want me to cook. Dad has this image in his head of how people treat people, especially in food. That's this thing about using my hands. But as a kid, your parents have this idea of what they want. And really, you just want to be just like them.
And that's where most of the blood flows. That's where... Có nhiều món có nhiều món có.
The sauce that I'm making is very simple in terms of the amount of ingredients, but it's the way you put it together. And it's seasoned vinegar, usually coconut vinegar with lots of alliums, lots of aromatics, lemongrass, ginger. We go out to the yard and get kaffir lime leaves, beautiful lemongrass that my mom has, and we're gonna spike it with the, we call it crazy chili that my mom has. It works really well with Bloodline. And I'm just going to slice it thin as I can. I'm no sushi chef, but I'm gonna try my best. My dad's the expert, wanna make him proud, right? And you slice your fish, dip it in the vinegar. Not that it will mask the fish essence, it will be very complementary to it. You have fat, you have vinegar, and all these spices, and the right ratios of everything. You take it out and you wrap it in your spring roll. The Bloodline, I serve it, and the techniques I use are basically the same as what my mom and dad would use. A combination of fukuok, the camps, Oakland. An interesting thing though, I remember there's a moment in time where, I brought a fish back to my parents' house. It was a yellowtail. I told my mom that I was going to cook it up. I butchered it up, filleted it up, and I proceeded to throw the bloodline away. And she stops and grabs my hand. I was like, why are you throwing away the bloodline? I said, don't you remember we eat bloodline all the time? I was like, Mom, that's what I've been trained from time. I didn't know you eat bloodline. And she brought up these reminders that my dad used to cook with bloodline. And I remember that was delicious. So I completely changed my perspective on what my professional culinary training would suggest. And I started to open my ear even more so to listen to how my mom perceives and interacts with food. It was pretty simple. I just had to shut up and listen.
Nó ngoài cái mẹ với ba làm việc bằng hai cái tay chân cực quá rồi, khi mà đời sau của mình á, rồi con với lại Tú á, là mẹ chỉ muốn nó làm giống như là có thể là làm nghề văn phòng hay là làm cái nghề gì là nhẹ nhàng hơn, đừng có lao động thì cho nó đỡ bớt cái khổ. Thì tại ba mẹ làm cực lắm chứ, tại vì mình từ Việt Nam mà ba mẹ Việt Nam với lại cha mẹ nghèo đâu có cho đi học cao giống như mấy người con nhà giàu. Nhưng mà nó nói nó muốn thì đâu có biết làm sao, thì nó bắt đầu học cũng không có tưởng tượng nổi. Nhưng mà ba nó vui lắm, tại vì ổng đi khoe người ta, ổng nói ổng không có tưởng tượng mà nó thành công ở cái nghề này. Mẹ cũng vậy, mẹ cũng sợ lắm, tại vì đâu có thấy ai mà con nít Việt Nam đẻ bên Mỹ bây giờ biết nấu đồ Việt Nam về thành top chef nữa. Dạ vui, mẹ đi ba rất là vui.
I'm proud of my parents and their instinct to survive. The food industry is obsessed with innovation, but real revolutions in food come from people like my parents. You can give them any ingredient, put them in any situation, and they'll make something delicious. It happens every day, all over the world, and I pass that on.
Know it, right? Inform yourselves. Know what's in season, and just according to the recommendations.
You dream, and you tell everyone around you, this is where I'm trying to get to. There's passion for that too. There's people who are fashion designers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, fashion's cool. I like fashion.
Yeah. I got all these accolades, and they always seem to be amazed that I learned from an informal cook, which is my mom. And they consider these dining institutions that I've worked for as formal training. What they don't understand is that the techniques and skills and palette that my mom cooks with, that sort of training predates any fine dining menu or any fine dining restaurant by a few hundred years. So at the end of the day, if you're talking about formal training, It's my mom's cuisine that's the formal training, not the other way around. But also know from my parents, the image they have of all this is different. Because the food they cooked, it's ultimately war food. Everything right now is the generational result of war. So maybe my working in food reminds them of something they like to forget. But I don't know how you forget things that are so much a part of what you are. And it's something I learned from my parents. If you have a fish, you take out the bloodline, just so you can forget it's a fish. What are you really eating? It's like when people write about our food. They say infused with generations-old wisdom. But they don't say that I learned how to make beautiful things from the seamstress.
Just give us a second, we're just setting up seats.
Moving into our panel discussion portion, would like to invite the speakers for today as well as our moderator. Just wanted to do a quick introduction to all four panelists as well as the moderator. Starting with Chef Tu. He is a California born and raised chef who is known for his Vietnamese and California cuisine. In 2016, he hosted regular weekly pop-ups and Vietnamese dining experience. And then in 2017, he was San Francisco Chronicle's Rising Star Chef. In 2019, he was featured contestant on Bravo's Top Chef Season 15. And today, he continues to do great work for the community and creating BLOODLINE with Katma, and just continuing to make a difference in showing food and social justice in today's community. So I also would like to introduce, sorry, I have the intros. Yes. Then I would like to introduce Chef Kevin Tang next to Chef Tu. Kevin is a first-generation Asian American from San Jose. He's previously worked at Mr. Juice and most recently as the executive sous of Nari, where he created his pop-up Claws and Mantis. Claws and Mantis was born out of the pandemic as a way to help pay rent, but blossomed into something so much more. Kevin and his team are set to debut a rotating multi-course menu in San Francisco, rooted in Southern Vietnamese cuisine and tastes of Asian American nostalgia. And then we also have Chef Trung and V. They are a husband and wife duo, and they're the executive chefs and co-owners of Co Nam, which is in Polk Gulch in San Francisco, and the second location is in Oakland, in Temescal. Their style is very similar to a version of Japanese izakaya and British gastropub, and they will be sharing more about their origins in today's discussion. And then we have our moderator, Anne-Marie Pham. Anne-Marie, better known as Amp, is a first-generation Vietnamese American from Los Angeles, but now calls San Francisco home. She is a retired pop-up chef of Anh Jai Bet, is that correct? Yeah. And co-host of a Bay Area-based food podcast called Sit Down, Be Hungry. You'll often find her grinning ear to ear and eating. So without further ado, we will have the panel discussion and then followed by a Q&A from the audience. Thank you.
Hi everyone, welcome. Thank you for inviting me to be here. So this is actually my second time watching Bloodline. I got to watch it a few years ago at Camp Festival, and the difference is I got to eat the little Bloodline treats. So I'll bring this up. Okay, so what signifies authentic and not authentic Vietnamese food? What do you think is the foundation or the staple flavor notes of Vietnamese food? Yeah, anybody?
I just had an interesting conversation with Evelyn today, which is on the board, about my experience. And I think when I talk about my experience openly about 5, maybe 10 years back, me identifying as Asian American, there's always this conflict with other people from identify with being Vietnamese or if not Asian. And there's this spear that hangs over my head continuously when I talk about Vietnamese experience, because it relates to what people think or what they think they know of what authenticity is or what authentic is, whether it's a flavor note, whether it's a word that I use, my Vietnamese accent, my American accent, what regions from Vietnam I'm from, and I can't at any given moment fully represent the entirety of complexity of the Vietnamese experience, which would scratch onto people's and seed into people's feeling of what is authentic or not. And I think this was an issue that I was having, I think, most of my life and most of my career. And I think if you guys see me in person, I'm Vietnamese American and I'm not short. I'm Vietnamese American and I'm fully tatted up. I'm Vietnamese American and I'm thick. You know, I don't look stereotypically what Anthony Bourdain would feature on his traveling shows, or even Andrew Zimmerman. I don't represent that because I don't look like that. However, lineage-wise, heritage-wise, I am Vietnamese. My parents hail from an island that's in Vietnam. We just represent things a little bit differently. So I don't think there's a specific flavor note that signifies any sort of like authenticity in Vietnamese, no matter what culture you're from. And I think this is a great reference I like to have. You see tapioca all over the place. In Chinatown, newsflash, that ingredient is not Asian. It's actually from South America and was brought to Asia by the Portuguese. Another fun fact. Lemongrass is not Vietnamese. If you trace the lineage of that ingredient, guess where it's from? It's from Africa. That's right. African is lemongrass. And they use tons of lemongrass specifically in East Africa. So like when people impose, I'm sorry, let me rephrase. That sounds bitter. They're not imposing. They're coming to me with hope to fulfill something that they're missing. And in my good moments, I'm able to fulfill that. In my not so great moments, I'm not able to fulfill that. So I think it's the thing. I want you guys to walk away today with an understanding that authenticity is a feeling. It's not it shouldn't be a word to gauge or qualify if a person truly represents what they are. I hope I answered that question.
I mean, I agree with you. Authenticity depends on what's authentic to you.
Absolutely. It's a personal feeling.
It's a personal.
Absolutely. And, you know, I've been through my phases as a chef too where, you know, my early years, I felt things weren't authentic because they didn't match my experiences. So for example, like I would eat Japanese sushi and it was a little bit different from what I understood. And I'm like, oh, that's not authentic. And I've learned that there's no possible way, even if I went to Japan every year, my whole entire lifetime, would I able to understand, would I have the capacity to understand the full scope of complexity of Japanese culture, let alone Japanese cuisine. And I feel it's the same way with any other culture in the world.
Hello guys, my name is Trung. I'm a Vietnamese. I was born in Vietnam. Left when I was 6. I'm one of those boat people, big being. I spent 4.5 years in a Thai refugee camp. And then we got sponsored by a Canadian Christian family. God bless them. We were flown to Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. Some are Canadian as well, American. So if the topic of diaspora really rings a bell, I'm the one, that's me right here. In terms of talking about authenticity, I think back in the 90s, there was this bad vibe about fusion. Authenticity, fusion, oh, we don't want any fusion, right? But now fusion is everything. In fact, Vietnamese cuisine or culture is a fusion of many countries around us. Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, China, French, well, you know, that's a cuisine when we were occupied, right? But the migration of people from all those countries back then where there really were no borders, politics were different, lent a lot to what Vietnamese cuisine is. So when talking about authenticity, what does it really mean? You know, everything evolved, culturally, food, especially food. So now we have restaurants in the Bay Area, throughout U.S. We don't have the original ingredients. Those ingredients aren't necessarily fresh or easily available. So we're taking what's available and seasonal in the geographical area, taking that, getting the palette of what Vietnamese cuisine is, and making it something new. So is that authentic or is that a fusion? So it's all subjective, but there's that, as chefs and restaurateurs, whenever we get that review that says, this is not authentic, and I beg to differ, like, do you really know what that is? So it's a good topic of discussion.
But wait, I go to Vietnam one time a year. We went on this tour, and I know what authentic is, okay? Like, I'm the biggest fan of Slanted Door, Charles Pham. I go to them all the time. I know what Vietnamese is, okay?
I think it's just more like kind of balance of the flavor, you know, just like the salty, the sweet, the sour, you know. It's just a balance of flavor that I think is authentic to me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to add to that as well too is that, you know, palates evolve, things change. You know, I think we forget, especially here in America, because we have such an abundance of resources and ingredients. We think that cuisine is created, you know, by strolling through the halls of Whole Foods, you know, and picking stuff and putting stuff together. Well, that's not the case. And this is the way I think of food. Whether you're an immigrant refugee mother, or you're in a kitchen, hotel, or you're on a country farm somewhere desolate, like in the middle of Russia, right? I think cuisine to me is a story that tells time and place. Especially, it talks about the human experience. It's the yearning for for survival and how they work with those ingredients to kind of nourish each other because you want to feed each other. So, for example, my parents are from an island. We come from a coastal community. So naturally, they would, their diets and dependency in terms of nutrition are based on the ocean. And because they get the nutrition from the ocean, they're going to try to find 1,000,001 different ways to use fish. Everything from fish cake to fish bone to fish soup to eating fish scales to eating fish skin, fish eyes, kind of everything in between. Fun fact, you know you can eat fish scales, right? They're not toxic, they're super crunchy. I can't do it, my dad does it. But just a reminder is that cuisine, we've turned it into this like very capitalistic marketing term where, you know, it's a cool and hip place and experience to kind of dive into. And we forget that cuisine is not that. It's about how people live. It's about how people nourish each other. It's an illustration of where they're at in time and what geographic location they have access to. Chef Kevin here has been kind of quiet. I just want to say I'm such a big fan of Chef Kevin and Claude Mantis. It really strikes a good chord in me, mainly because he really doesn't stem from anything that's traditional or Vietnamese. If anything, he's stemming from a place of his Vietnamese American experience, Vietnamese diaspora experience. And you can't argue with him on his authenticity or his recipes, because almost every recipe he puts up that he serves to people stems back to stories about his family. And I think that's the most beautiful thing ever. And then within that complex, he adds a little bit to it to make it his own. Can you speak on that, Chef Kevin? That's what I hear you speak.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, in terms of like authentic, there's just so many variations on dishes, and so many different households do it so many different ways. For example, like our tip call, right? Talking to other Vietnamese families, like you use coconut water, you use Coco Rico. Like what's authentic? Who decides what's authentic out of all that? So we tested everything, you know, like are you caramelizing your sugar with refined white sugar or palm sugar? It's like who determines what's the most authentic way? And I think it's kind of like how we experience it in our home, you know. So what we kind of do at Claws and Mantis is we kind of just, it's also a love affair with all the local farms and purveyors around the area. And when the product is so good here, how could you not utilize it? So, I mean, pretty much it's kind of using what we can't necessarily get access to here and just substituting things in with like stuff we find around the area.
And that's what our moms did. You
Absolutely.
know, my mom used chayote because it was there, right? My mom used Sprite in her 7-Up in her fish sauce as a substitute for coconut water because it was there. And you know, like growing up in West Oakland, like we didn't have a Whole Foods over there. We still don't, you know. You know, she probably didn't have access to like fresh coconut water. It was just more accessible to go to the corner liquor store and get like, I think it was at the time a 65 cents, 50 cents a can of 7-Up, you know? Yeah. But I think the opposite is true too in terms of like the amazing produce. So, just to be clear.
The panel we have today takes Vietnamese food in a very unique and inspiring directions from French to California modern. How has Vietnamese food evolved when you develop your pop-up or restaurant?
Well, for me?
Anybody.
Anybody.
It's open.
You want to chime in on that?
I didn't hear the question.
Could you repeat the question?
How has Vietnamese food evolved when you develop your own pop-up restaurant?
Pop-up or restaurant?
How has it evolved?
Yeah. Since you guys started.
Yes, my wife is a silent type, super creative with the knife skills, like a ninja.
Classic chef.
She delegates all the other stuff to me. You know, just like Kevin said, we just take what's in season, what's available, and we try to market it. Food is a cultural thing. Our moms, our aunties, our uncles, they cook it, and it's a celebration of getting together. that's what you eat. You get together, talk about how's your day. So we try to take that feeling and put it to a restaurant. Well, why do you go to a restaurant? If you're hungry and you just want to eat, well, you just cook at home. Let's go DoorDash, right? And that's what people do. But when you go to a restaurant, it's a celebration, whether it's good, something great happened, or it's something sad. But it's a get-together, a conversation of, hey, how you been? And we want to carry that through our food. You taste something, we want that to resonate. Oh, wow, that reminded me of this or that moment, when we had a birthday or, somebody was born. So that's what we do as restaurateur, to try and make food not just something that you satisfy your hunger, but memories, get together, and of course the ambiance and so forth. With the pop-up, that allows us to experiment with many new things. I'm going to bring the conversation down to the current status, right? With COVID, labor shortages, the fear, it's extremely, very difficult to find a talent pool that are willing to work, and it's very tough. Highly cost prohibitive. So one of our locations, we actually closed it down for remodel to change concept. But the reason for that, again, it goes to pop-up. Why do we need pop-up? It's experimental. If the original business plan, the formula doesn't work, you gotta just do a pivot and change it. So that's what pop-ups do, and that's what pop-up allow us to experiment with our Vietnamese cuisine by bringing in other aspects of it and also market it. Izakayas. Well, look, we're restaurateurs here. What make money or what's on the shelf in the back? Spirits, alcohol. Again, that's a part of celebration. So how do we take Vietnamese cuisine, complement that formula, market it, make money, take care of the staff, but also provide the product, the end product, the experience. So that's what that's the fun part. And the end product is a weekly evolution of Vietnamese recipes and seeing what's in season.
I mean, during COVID, we had to change our menus because, we had to start selling banh mi, which is more easier to eat. And, with the price of the food coming up, so we had to change our menus a little too, So it's...
Yeah, on that note, didn't you open up a banh mi pop-up and got crucified for it not being authentic or too expensive?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up, because this is a great time to bring it up, because I was trying to charge $10 for a banh mi, and a bunch of people tried to crucify me in terms of saying I was trying to gentrify it. At the end of the day, I had a staff, even though it was a pop-up, I was trying to provide health care for, full-time benefits, and I was paying overtime. I wasn't paying them under the table. And at simple $10 a banh mi, people were outraged. But the pandemic happened. The food industry nearly collapsed. And all of those naysayers are completely quiet now, because you saw how frail the food industry was, or is. And the fact how food service workers are truly underpaid. And, I stick, at the end of the day, I do sway with the crowd and what the public thinks. But in addition to that, I stick to my ethics. And I stick to my morals and values. And if that doesn't jive, I'm not going to force it. So I'm sad to say that pop-up didn't come to fruition. However, it was a good learning experience for me. And I look forward to the future in finding opportunities to feed people banh mi. That's more than $10.
More than $10. I said my banh mi is $10.
$9.75.
If I could just comment on inflation as well too, is that we are going through inflation. Living of costs is going up. And I know it's a very conscious thought of me that getting a good meal is a very difficult thing for a lot of people, so it's not inclusive. Even though across the board, I feel like people aren't going out as much, but if you guys do, support your local institutions, support your restaurant owners that are from a marginalized community, You know, if you can, stop going to Whole Foods and getting your food. You know, and you know, I might get crucified for this, but don't order through Uber Eats or Dash, or what's it called, Dash. DoorDash, mainly because they take such a huge margin out of your restaurants. You know, like, put your convenience second and go support your restaurant. If you live 10, 15 minutes away, I'm telling you, it's going to cost a lot cheaper. Just go and buy directly from them or just give a phone call. And at the end of the day, they'll take a little bit more margin to support their business. So I think more than ever, our communities are suffering. If you guys want to make a difference and you guys want to support with your dollars, especially here in the Bay Area.
Yeah, on that note too, to say, keep in mind that small mom and pop, small restaurants would typically hire as a priority, you know, workers, team members that live close by. So literally, if you are trying to support your local community, those restaurants are the ones that are hiring, you know, people that live nearby. And look, they're amazing people, you know. It's like we're in an industry where passion is about everything. I think a lot of people that work for me are team members. They could easily do something else and make a lot more money, but it just doesn't feed this. And at the end of the day, that's what it is, you know.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to add on things that have developed during the pop-up. Definitely before I knew I wanted to do some type of pop-up tasting menu concept, I just kind of had like a bit of an identity crisis a little bit. I was raised in a Chinese, Cambodian, Vietnamese household. So during the pandemic, I realized that like it's just these Vietnamese home-cooked dishes that I miss the most. So that's what I wanted to recreate. And just growing up in Eastside San Jose, it was just such amazing Vietnamese food. So this pop-up has almost been a way of just rediscovering my Vietnamese roots and just going back, calling my mom, you know, like just having those conversations with her about, oh, what did you make? What did you put inside here and all that stuff. So it's definitely been almost like therapy. So as these like dishes are rotating and stuff, there's something behind it, you know. So with these multi-course dinners, I'm very much like telling you a story, or like telling you about myself and my upbringing. So for a very long time, I've kind of like pushed it aside. Being like the only Asian guy in a group of people, you tend to be like the punchline of a lot of jokes. So it wasn't until cooking where I learned to embrace it. You know, I started cooking in Chinese kitchens, and I still feel like this bit of imposter syndrome because I didn't go to cooking school, and I'm not trained in like French or Italian style. I've cooked most Asian food.
You don't need it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, that's what I mean when I say like it's developed into something more. So,
if I could just add to all that, sorry, Pam. If I could just add to both of theirs, just this, you know, when I started with pop-ups and started wanting to cook Vietnamese food, there wasn't a lot of space. And one of the reasons I left my most recent job at that time, in the mid-2000 teens, I'm not going to say the restaurant name, but you can look it up. But there was this tone where if I was Asian, I couldn't cook or use Asian ingredients because they'll come to me and they'd be like, hey, we're not trying to run an Asian restaurant. Total BS, right? When the chef prior to me, the chef that worked prior to me, he was and she were both of European descent. Not mad at my white folks out there, especially if you're supporting marginalized communities, right? They were embracing at that time this whole sushi Japanese culture of shoyu and seaweed and tofu. But they could do it all they want, but they made it super cool, and because they did it, it was California cuisine. The moment I touched it, I turned the restaurant into an Asian restaurant, which it got me really upset. So in that note, in that sort of background of understanding, I felt erased. I felt this heavy sense of erasure. And I didn't have a space for myself to, or for any of us to have a narrative around just existing, you know? And I felt that heaviness in the food space, that if you didn't fit the templates of pho and banh mi for Vietnamese food, or being an Asian American in a kitchen and you didn't cook rice or eat rice, you were excluded completely from the conversation. And I fought tooth and fucking nail for my narrative and our narratives to exist. And I'm so glad that, you know, well, Go Nam and Sitmo, they've been restaurateurs in a long time in this game. And I'm sure that they can tell you about that evolution of people being more receptive about Vietnamese food, right? But, you know, for Kevin, you know, having a space for him, and he's continuing what I don't do anymore, I think that's beautiful. I think it's amazing. You know, that it's not just an Asian checkbox anymore. And it's not just AAPI, but we all have these complex, beautiful diaspora and non-diaspora identities in all communities, in black communities, and brown communities, and in yellow communities, and peach communities, whatever other colors there are, you know? Yeah, I said peach because I don't check the yellow box, I check peach.
Since you brought up, you know, Vietnamese food, usually people recognize it as banh mi or pho. Is there a classic Vietnamese dish that each of you think that more people should know about? And where can you try it?
Let's get the whole room to say pho. Can you go over this exercise for everyone? For say pho. Everyone, can you guys say pho?
On a count of three.
Pho. Oh, everyone knows it already. So.
Not pho.
Pho. Or.
That reminded me of the woman recently with the Queen of Kanji right now. Like, really? Come on now. Yeah. Kevin, what would you? What's your?
For me, canh chua, this like tamarind soup, especially with the gakao, like braised catfish with the tamarind soup. That combination is probably my Mount Rushmore of Vietnamese foods. And personally, I like through my pop-up, I'm purposely not. San Francisco doesn't really have too strong of a Vietnamese scene, but I would say in the Tenderloin reminds me of going to my auntie's house and getting it. So they get it pretty close. Yeah.
We heavily ate a lot of seafood, and one of the best memories for me is we were pre-9/11. And underneath the Bay Bridge, on the right side, there's a radio station. And underneath it, there used to be a military base where they would store all of their military vehicles. That's the throwback, you know. And any natives around here, I know you guys know what I'm talking about. You know, I got you. But they used to store military vehicles underneath the Bay Bridge. And right off of the edge of that, there was to catch these huge, big skate. Skate is similar to stingray. The difference between stingray and skate is they both look alike, they both have the big wings. The only difference is stingray on their tail has a stinger. Skate does not have a stinger. The French love skate. People here in North America don't love skate. I don't know why, the meat's delicious. But my dad would catch it, and the texture of meat. It's super dark red, and it resembles not tuna, but like a lean, soft beef. Super delicious. My dad and I would catch it, and then we would make fish jerky out of it. And this is my relationship to fish sauce caramel. Sorry, Andrew Zimmerman, you're not the first one, right? The way we use fish sauce caramel in my household with my family is that we would make fish sauce caramel to pour it over fresh thin fillets of fish, and then we doused it with a ton of black pepper, and then we would sun dry it, and it would turn into amazing fish jerky. Most amazing, most delicious stuff. That's the thing that I feel like is so underrated. However, once again, it's not something that you see all over Vietnam, but you see a lot of it in coastal communities in Vietnam, specifically Southwest, also known as Binh Dai Gang. What's your favorite dish?
Well, I like a lot of, they would call it poor people's food. So it's mostly like with the shrimp paste. I like anything caramelized with the shrimp paste, or I would make a dipping sauce with it, and we dip fried tofu or some pickle, the small pickle eggplant thing. It's like a kind of stinky food, I guess you would say. Fermented, you know. I'm from Nha Trang. Yeah. So, you know, like anytime mum, you know, so that is kind of what I like.
Yeah, I'm kind of on that same channel as well, except my favorite dish is bò nhúng giấm. Oh, you know that stinky mum name sauce? I eat that up like it's water. You know, oh yes, so bò nhúng giấm, so usually popularized, it's called 7-course beef. So 7 courses of beef made different way, but really I like just that one. It's like a hot pot. You have a pot of, you know, vinegar. We obviously you can put Coco Rico if you wanted, but we put, you know, fresh coconut juice, lemongrass, pineapple sometimes. What else is there? Yeah, but, you know, black pepper. So that's over, you know, an open flame, just boil. And that's what you would dip your raw slices of beef into. You know, you can cook it. I like mine raw. No, not raw, but rare. You dip it in quickly, you take it out, and then you put it on top of the rice paper and you roll it up. So I guess as Asian, Vietnamese, you know, we eat a lot of herbs, a lot of veggies. So, yeah. Oh my God, I'm hungry already. So you got rice paper, right? You have lettuce, bean sprouts, cucumber, anything seasonal. Tito, you know. Oh my gosh. Seasonal, yep.
Morella's Tito.
All those things, like whatever is in season, whatever you can go out to your garden and cut. Put it right on top of the rice paper that you just dip so it's nice and soft. You know, I put a few strips of beef in there, roll it up, and then dip it in my favorite sauce, Mum Name. Mum Name, they make it in Phuket as well. Really famous for that. And that's fermented anchovies. Oh, stinky-licious. It is amazing. You know, what makes it really nice is, of course, when you taste it in the raw form, it's very pungent. It's fermented for a long time. Then you mix it in with pineapple, obviously Thai chili, little sugar, vinegar, all sort of stuff. I cannot give you my secret. But, so we serve it at our restaurant, right? And, you know, I'll be out there talking up our guests and telling them about it. You gotta get that stinky sauce. You're gonna love it, because I drink it up.
It's not a date night food.
No, it's not. And you know, the dish comes with a warning. If you get it on your shirt, it's not my fault. I'm not paying for your dry cleaning. But once you mix that pungent, fermented sauce, and the balance, just like my wife said, between the sweetness, the saltiness, the tanginess, the bitterness, spicy, and all that is just blowing up on your tongue. And you're just eating that. Oh, that's my go-to. It's a lot of work, and by the end of the night, your kitchen, your dining room smells like vinegar and fish. You're licking up your finger, and it stings, but it's so good. That's my dish.
If I could just add to the fermentation culture in Vietnam, it's mainly because Vietnam is a fairly plant-based diet, meaning there's a lot of vegetables and there's a lot of rice. So, not that there's a protein deficiency, but that's a way the Vietnamese people found protein into their diet. So specifically, anchovies are extremely high in amino acids. What are amino acids? Amino acids are the building blocks of protein. And for you to unlock that magic in anchovies, you would ferment it. And the longer that you ferment it, the stinkier it is. But the fact that you're eating it through Vietnamese cuisine, you're eating lots of vegetables, you're eating a lot of starch, a lot of other things that don't have protein, and you pair that with this very high protein thing, that's the experience that Chef Trung was talking about, where you put those things together and it's like magic. So there is like a science part to it. It's not just stinky, it's fermented, and it's high in protein / amino acids. And that's, I think, if anything, a real underlining experience when you eat Vietnamese food, just so you guys understand that better.
Also, for me, 7 courses of beef was always something that, like, you went out for, like, graduation, grandma's birthday, cousin's birthday. It was always a celebration. So every time I have any of those courses, that's the memory that's tied. A celebration. So probably a shot of Heineken, you know, that's what tastes the most like a celebration for me. But yeah, that's what I love.
Or Hennessy. It's not a celebration without Hennessy.
That's it. Does anyone else have questions for our guest speakers today?
Q&A time.
First off, thank you so much. I was struck in the movie about how you went into your parents' yard and picked all the food, and I just wanted to ask all of you to talk a little about your relationship with farms and farming and plants, both in terms of the flavor, but also the economics and the business of it, how to support fellow immigrant farmers or people who are taking care of the land.
That's a great question. Can you guys want to start? I'm ready to jump in.
Very much when we say like our cuisine is like Californian, I think that's just more of like an umbrella term of using the best of our produce around here. I've been asked multiple times, oh, can you cook in Austin or New York? I'm like, I can't leave the produce that we have and the farmers that we have. So really it just starts with going to the farmer's market, seeing for yourself what's freshest and all that, and developing these relationships with farmers, getting first dibs and all that stuff. But very much, when we walk around the farmer's market and like 3 dishes will change just because of how great we see something got incorporated in our course. So
that's what our mamas did, you know?
Yeah.
Our mamas would there'd be a neighbor and she has a fig tree or a kumquat tree or I don't know, even like Korean ginseng in their backyard, and they'll get the greens of like, oh, how do you cook with this? And then something new comes out of it. So like, I love what Chef Kevin's saying because like his experience of innovation, it doesn't uniquely just exist with high-end chefs or trained chefs like ourselves up here on stage. It absolutely exists in our families, particularly our matriarchs and mothers. So, and to answer your question, coincidentally, I've been passionately working with Slow Food, a nonprofit organization, specifically the Slow Food East Bay chapter, and another organization with Kitchen Table Advisors. Why? I just found out that, here's a statistic that you guys will help you guys process some things. There's 2 billion small farmers in the world, right? And of that 2 billion small farmers, they produce 80% of the world's food, right? And here's another statistic. In that 80% of the world's food, who do you think makes up about 70% of the world's population? Fucking Asia, right? And here's another thing to add on to that, right? Considering all that, let's specifically talk about the United States. When we talk about farming, when we talk about organics, sustainability, I've personally witnessed myself for the past 20 years, 15 years of my professional cooking, that it was heavily white, right? Every time you saw it on TV, anytime I read a book, any sort of chef book, given these narratives of facts that the farming industry, agriculture was built on the back of black slaves and all the immigrant brown workers for the past 100 years, right? And here's another fact. And our Secretary of Agriculture just admitted it this year, is that it's the USDA in the United States have admitted that they purposely excluded people of color from getting institutional aid, specifically through agriculture, right? Let that process, right? In this past pandemic, there has been zero government aid for farmers. They said that they have, but those subsidies went to like corn farmers who were making corn for ethanol, for fuel, not to feed people. So in this pandemic, just kind of through friends and in my efforts in working, I passionately try to just zone in and focus in AAPI farmers and other farmers of color in the Central Valley, specifically Fresno, and another one in the northern Sacramento, right? And these are people who, and farmers, exist in desolate communities. They farm because they need to survive, and they farm because there isn't a grocery store in their community. You know, specifically like northern Sacramento in that sort of area, specifically in places like Stockton, Fresno, and I've connected with a few where they just organically farmed in their backyard, and now they're scaling thanks to Kitchen Table Advisors and Slow Food East Bay, just through offering resources that they had to get community funding to scale up to be an organic farm. So I'm passionately working to connect with these farms so that when you walk through a farmer's market, you're not like flipping through like a Polo magazine or like a Calvin Klein magazine where everyone's white and there's like one or two token colored people. And I think we need to do that because we're now going to create an open space for the people who built the agriculture in this country, if not the world, people of color.
I think on that note is we have to look at ourselves in the mirrors as consumers and change our habit and perception of what Asian food or products entail. It's very tough to have a Vietnamese restaurant and charge a certain price. A Vietnamese name, a Chinese name, anything that's not Californian is very tough to push that pricing point. And in order for restaurateurs to support that smaller scale mom and pop that literally are growing all the veggies and the herbs organically, we want to make sure we pass on a good price to them. We don't want to kind of high pressure, okay, we got to keep it low, because we all know how hard, they work to farm that produce, right? So in order for us to do that, it's what we're doing now. We're changing our business plan just because of COVID. We're not doing high volume. You can't sustain it. You don't have the labor, you don't have the size. So now, again, circle back to the pop-up as well. We're experimenting with different dishes, using more organically, locally grown produce, going out there, meeting the farmers, going out there in the morning and say, hey, look, deliver to me these number of days, just tell me what you got. Shoot me a text, we'll do it, and we'll be creative with that menu, and that's going to be the rotating menu. But then again, there's a price point, and everything is a numbers game. It's in order for it to happen, we do have to just change our perception of what it should be. We're not saying being expensive, but just it's not going to be a $9 banh mi, and for us to use organically grown cucumbers, carrots, daikon. It's just not possible.
I love that you brought up that point because right now, this whole organic game in terms of like Whole Foods and their high quality and their standards, right? It's not inclusive. It creates this sort of like elitist feel. I'm a family that lives in Burlingame, and between my husband and I, why am I the wife? Between my wife and I, we make $300,000 a year. So, buying organic, buying sustainable, which I duly believe we should be eating for our bodies, it makes it really accessible for me. But what about the family that lives on the border of Chinatown and West Oakland, where they're subsidized through Medi-Cal or welfare? I mean, how are they accessing these organic ingredients? So in this sort of regard, it makes small businesses suffer. It makes small communities suffer because organic now becomes an elitist thing. And I've been pushing passionately to kind of change that narrative. That, to eat clean and healthy food and have clean and healthy water, that those things should be a human right. If me growing up as a kid, I shouldn't have been consuming food that was laced with pesticides and anabolic hormones that may translate into me having cancer later in my life. That's ridiculous. And all of that, from my research and what I'm learning, is that it's because we don't have representation. We need a Secretary of Food in the United States. A person that would say, hey, we need to take care of our people. People need to eat clean. We need to subsidize organic farmers. Opposed to giving that subsidized billions of dollars to people who make, I don't know, petroleum fuel, out of corn, whatever it is. So I love that. Thank you for your honesty. And I love that you brought it up because he's fighting these balances of not just prejudiceness, of like what people are willing and not willing to pay for his food or their food, but like how does he find that balance where he offers the best ingredients? Because that's just, of course you want the best ingredients, because you don't get the best ingredients because you want to nourish people. You want to make sure people get healthy food. So I love that. Did you guys notice I sign off like in the weirdest moments with the weirdest comments? I'm working on it.
Does anyone else have a question? Yes, go ahead.
First of all, thanks for being here. It's really cool to see a whole Vietnamese panel.
Hey.
Never been part of one. My question for you guys is, you're here for a reason today, and I get the sense, for the community, and I would like to know, if you have a vision or what that vision might be that you're formulating to continue to give back to the community and especially the Vietnamese community. I'm just curious about where your heart's at, and I would love to just hear more about that.
That's a great question. Just in my time and being in the Vietnamese food space, there was great division. Like, I feel that we still kind of suffer, and I'm just going to speak for the Vietnamese community, where we suffer from assimilation. Where if there's a room of people and there's only one Asian person or one Vietnamese person, there can only be one person there. And I'm going to be very open about my social media incident this past weekend. Right? I won't drop any names. If you guys want to find more, you can dig through my Instagram. But I had a fellow Vietnamese American colleague accuse me of stealing an ideal from them. And continuously in my life, whether it's a Vietnamese or Asian person or not, I'm being accused of stealing something. So I think first off, there's so many things that I feel like I'm being challenged as a person of color that is not just divisive, but it stems this notion of division. And my efforts and my reason that I put this panel together, thanks to the help of Terry and Sally of OACC, is that I really think there's, in 2021, after Trump, going through this pandemic, communities are more divided more than ever. And I'm not trying to create a panel only for Vietnamese Americans or only for AAPI. My hope is that I resonate with the people who aren't from my community, see that I am a human being, and I go through human experiences, and we can resonate and reflect, cry, laugh, and build together, and I don't know why, and I still don't know why, where there's this pettiness of like attacking each other and saying that, there's no space for you in this room. I'm the only Asian. You're taking my business. No. That's my hope. That's the reason why I continually am trying to build community, not just here in Oakland, Chinatown, but in multiple different facets of community. And because I'm a chef, I try to do it through food. So I hope that answers your question. And of course, they have answers as well too.
Kevin got something to say. What do I hope to accomplish? I hope to get a brick and mortar, and I hope to win a Michelin star for Vietnamese food. Put on the pedestal, give it the respect it deserves. It's just, I don't know why no one has done it before. It's just so balanced. There's so many ties to French cuisine also. It's just, I don't know. Why not?
I feel like there's been many attempts. It's just maybe didn't get to fully be authentically themselves, and that's why it didn't get to that level of a Michelin?
I think it's a resource thing. You know, like I've met a lot more young white chefs that have multi-million-dollar backings. You know, and unlike myself, I didn't inherit an IRA from my parents. You know, if anything, being very open about it, I inherited debt from my parents. You know, so just being real. I think that's a very real thing. The Michelin game, I know you're going to get it. I'm not doubting that. But the Michelin game in fine dining, it's a fucking boys club, okay? And it's a pay-to-play game. It's different now, however. That's what it was when I was growing up, when I was cooking.
I think to answer your question, it hit home to me a lot. You know, growing up in Vietnam, and then 4 years in the Thai refugee camp. To me, I was a kid. I was 6. It wasn't like a torturous thing, but I saw adults. As adults, we really have psychological issues, but as a kid, it's just an adventure. I went to camp. Then, you know, to Canada, I was the only Asian among all my friends. You know, my name, you know, from Trung, it became Trung. Nguyen became Nugent. You know, and the identity thing is a real thing, but as kids, you know, we don't linger on that thought. And to answer your question, so when I came to the US, Minneapolis first, then here, so my main business, I actually design and build restaurants in people's homes. 25 years old, you know, my Caucasian clients, at first like, you sure you know what you're doing? Because most GCs, builders, designers, they're a lot older, 65. Then I open up my portfolio. That's when it happens. Okay, let's do it. So I've been doing this restaurateur and design gig for 15 years. And one of the things that I've always wanted to do is give back. Because we were very lucky and blessed to have a family, an organization that reach out to us and say, hey, we're gonna plug you out. We're gonna send you to another place. And we're gonna teach you the ropes, the life skills that you need to blossom. And without them, I would not have had this opportunity to open my businesses and be a part of this community. So one of the things we're trying to do is we partner with local, you know, organization, charity. So when we have new immigrants come in, we always stop and say, hey, we're hiring for all these things. No skills needed. You don't need to speak English as long as you speak Vietnamese or Spanish or other languages that are one of our team members, you know, can communicate with you. You're game. You're good. And then from there, we get resources to, you know, get you in any direction you can. Because nobody wants to be a dishwasher. My dad, who is a civil engineer, take care of his family, 3 kids, you know, came to Canada. What degree? We don't take a degree. So he washed dishes, worked, you know, in a restaurant, work as merchandising, and go to school to support us. I saw him 2 hours a day sleeping on a couch so I could have my room to study. So that's what immigrants. I mean, I'm not the only one with a similar story. You know, everybody go through it, although it's all different. But culturally, what we need to do is, to hit back on that point, is really accept each other too. Because at our restaurant on Pope Street, there was a Vietnamese restaurant that literally opened across the street. And my first impression was not, oh, it's a Vietnamese restaurant. It was, okay, please, I hope you just maintain that price point. Because everybody worked so hard to maintain that. But as typical Vietnamese, and I can say it because we see it all the time, we go in there and we undercut the price. And why does yours have to be 99 cents cheaper? Keep it the same price, provide a better product. We're brothers, sister, auntie, uncles, and all that. Help each other. You know, the rising tides raise all boats, all ships. In this case, boats. So I think that's what it is. It's just recognizing that, you know, we're culturally, we're all the same. It's not really, you know, me competing against you. Is us competing with the community to try and help everybody. And that should be the goal. And what we try to do is, if anybody wants to open a restaurant, come see me. I'll show you the way, the ropes. You know, well, we didn't have money when we opened the restaurants. I swing hammers. I work 18-hour days. I still work 18-hour days. We have 2 kids. That's just the way it is, you know. And it's a passionate thing. That's why we're chefs. That's why we do what we do. It's survival. So.
I love that. I just want to add to what you're saying. Like, more is better. Like, we need to break out of this notion and this thought as marginalized communities and communities of color is that there's only one template, there's only one slot for us. We all need to fight for that slot, you know? There should be 20 times more Vietnamese restaurants, or 20 times more black restaurants, or 30 more taco stands, whatever it is. And, you know, across the board, I think diversity for me is what makes the true fabric of democracy work here in America. And without that, everything's going to be corporatized. If there's only going to be one Asian spot, you know, it just makes it easier for huge corporations to go in and buy that one spot. And then everything's going to be owned by Walmart, you know? Or if you go into a Whole Foods, everything's going to be owned by 365, right? Which we're already seeing. So we need more brands. We need more slots. We need more than one sriracha sauce, right? So I think that's the thing. Not just expanding the narratives, but encouraging the platform for other people in this space to create more slots. So more generations down, it's a full palette of different colors, not just white. So.
I really just wanted to thank all the panelists and our wonderful moderator today. It's really, I'm really proud to see this representation on stage, and I love the time and place and effort that you put into the community. So thank you. I am wanting to be mindful of time, so we do have a Tai Chi demonstration and exercise for us. I know we've been sitting for a long time, so if you have time to stay back to join us, we welcome you. But we also have a few closing remarks. But thank you again to our panelists for today's event, and thank you all for coming, and hope you stay. As I invite Evelyn on stage to kind of lead us in our Tai Chi exercise today.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I know everyone's been sitting for a long time and we've gone over schedule, so I don't mind if you have other things to attend to and then you have to leave. But what we're going to do now is staff is going to help clear the chair. Oh, wait, before we do that, I would like to introduce my fellow board members. Maybe I should start by introducing myself. My name is Evelyn Lee, and I'm the president of the board of OACC. And we have 14 members, 3 of which are here today. Arbor, could you please stand up? Actually, Arbor, can you come over here and just... Okay. And then Eunice, I'd like you to come up also. I mean, this is our open house, pretty much, and we rarely have an opportunity to meet the people in the community who support us. So I'd like Arbor and Eunice to greet you to our software opening as well.
Hi. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm Arbor, and I am a newish board member, what, like a year-ish? Yeah, anyway, well, it's great to be here with you all. I love this organization, and isn't this space amazing, by the way?
Yeah.
I love it. So thank you all so much for being here.
I mean, because of the pandemic, I think this is the first time you've actually come into OACC, right?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey folks, my name is Eunice Kwan. I'm a longtime Oakland resident. I live out in Rockridge, and I'm also a newer board member of Oakland Asian Cultural Center, and I really enjoyed the panel, so thank you so much.
You're welcome. And the other board member who was here earlier had to leave for another engagement. That was Sandra Yue. Her father lives actually in that high-rise, I don't know what it's called, on Franklin. So each board member makes a unique contribution to the perspective and workings of the board, and Sandra helps out a lot by being our eyes and ears in Oakland Chinatown, so that issues aren't just, intellectual issues to us, issues of public safety, vulnerability, identity as an Asian in Oakland. I mean, she brings that perspective. Arbor works for
New Media Ventures.
New Media Ventures. And what do you do?
Okay. We're a nonprofit venture capital fund. We invest specifically in progressive startups, both nonprofit or for-profits.
Right, thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, because nonprofits really need support. I mean, yeah, your job is to bring money to nonprofits, right? And then Eunice, I can't believe I'm so out of it. I should have asked you to introduce yourself more. You work for UC Berkeley, right? And can you explain a little briefly what you do at UC Berkeley?
I'm the director of the Asian American office at UC Berkeley and the SDBH, so we work to support Asian American students, staff, and faculty there, and also connect with the broader community.
Great, thanks so much. Okay, so thank you. That's a quickie introduction to the board. Everyone who's here, I guess you're interested in taichi, so the staff will just help move the chairs off to the sides of the rooms. We're going to do some taichi. With the flooded subway for 2 years, and the teacher that I learned with has this methodology of stretching, particularly your spine. And so in taichi, everyone has to be relaxed. You can't, in taichi, the practice is to have your chi flowing through your body, and one way to prepare yourself for that is to stretch. And these are very non-invasive, non-stressful stretching exercises that you can do anywhere. Okay, so feet shoulder width apart. And so what I want you to do is just watch me really just first. And I'm going to do this faster than you have to play. This is you don't move anything. Going down your leg. Relax here for a second. And start rotating to your left. Nothing is moving but the top of your head. Top of your head is described as a circle. Roll back. Roll back to that. Look your head. Roll around to that. Roll around to the right. You should feel like sand is draining from your ear as you round your shoulder. Let your head fall forward. Do not hold your chin up. Come around to the front. You should be feeling stretching all the way up and down your spine. Okay, keep going to the left. Keep going. Feel sand pouring out from your ears. Your left. Your head roll back. All the way Right here. Don't move your head up and come forward. Very relaxed. Stop in the center for a split second. Now reverse around. Straight back. Keep rolling around. Not lifting. Aiming with the top of your head.
Here.
Hang down the front again. One more time. That's where you're right here. Your head came back. Creating a circle with the top of your head. All from your chest. Come back to the center. Okay, now roll up slowly. Foot. Feel the energy. Bring your fists down to your ears. Just pull back. Pull back. Pull your elbows straight back and bring your chest out. Opening your chest as wide as possible. Elbows. Elbows back. All right. Now let your head hang down. Hang down. Hang back. And breathe maybe 3 times. Head up. Unclench your fists. Now your fingers are pointed toward each other. Push forward with the palms of your hands. Push forward. And at this point, let your head hang down and make a nice arch with your back. And push forward as long as far as you can, because what you're doing is you're extending your back, stretching all the spaces between your spinal cord. And you're doing this, keep your legs low, no rocking. All right, 1, 2, 3. Relax your arms.